What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my Bleedsplosion bow Gladiator. What's different about my build is that I am using split arrow with fork and chain. Very fun. It's a really smooth playstyle. I much prefer it over random arrows, but if you feel like going random arrows instead, you can use exactly what I'm using. All you're going to do is swap out chain, fork, and split arrow for random arrows, ink AoE, conk effect, and something else, whatever you guys feel like. But this bow build is really good for Harvest League because crafting bows is at an all-time easiness. So I highly recommend trying out this build. For league starts for the future, I'm gonna put this in my league start videos because bleed bow is such a great build to do. It's so easy to scale. You just do so much DPS while leveling that especially because you can just spec Resolute Technique as ASAP, which I'm gonna have you guys do in my build. It makes it so you don't have to worry about accuracy like you do with other melee builds, and you can just scale DPS afterwards. I'm pretty much going to be going over everything in the POE Forum, so if you guys are interested and have not seen that, I recommend checking it out. I go into depth about what gear pieces look for, what each mod you should look for, so I highly recommend reading that really quick if you're interested. But if you're interested in a certain part of the video, make sure you click down the timestamps down below and skip along to whatever you need. I'm going to be going over each part of the build, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. First, I'm going to be going over the gearing portion of this build because the gear is pretty important. First, you have an option of getting Assasilum. I highly recommend it, but if you are against this for whatever reason, it's not mandatory. You just put your puncture on your bow instead, and I use it as a 6-link. But I'm going to go over Assasilum first because it's one of the big parts of our build. So if you don't know, Assasilum is a unique helmet that gives transforms bow skills into snipe skill. So now you have to charge your bow skills to use them. The reason we do this is because it gives us a crazy amount of DPS. It says trigger stock of spells deal 33% less damage, so if you just tap it really quick, you're going to be doing less DPS. But the advantage are very worth it. So this is what the snipe skill, this is the POE, and arrow skills deal 120% more damage with ailments per stage, and you can go up to 6 stages with the snipe skill. So we're doing a crazy amount of damage. I would say even after 3, if you've only hit 3 stages, you're pretty much doing as much damage, if not more, than a 6-link already. So I highly recommend it. I'm gonna use the snipe skill really quick so you guys see. Look on the top left corner of my screen where my buffs are. On the right of my stone aura, you're gonna see the stages and how fast it pops up. So that's how long it takes for me to cast vanilla, no attack speed, because my bow actually didn't roll attack speed, but that's how long it takes. It scales with attack speed and all the stuff you have. So if you're using this build and we're in a map, we have a bunch of frenzy charges because our Ascendency, and then we have other things going on like onslaught, this snipe skill becomes a lot faster. So I highly recommend trying this helmet. It is amazing, and I can't recommend it enough if you have the budget to use it. Alright, next most important thing. So I'm going to go in order of importance on what you should level up or get on your build if you're using this build. The next most important thing I would say is your bow. You're going to need a Elder bow, eye level 83 plus, to be able to get 60% chance for bleeding. That's your most important skill you're going to need, or roll you're going to need on your bow. It's a prefix. And then what you're going to want to pair with that is increased damage with bleeding, because it's the next biggest roll you can get. And then I decided to go the multi-mod path just to get one as soon as possible for this league, because I've been rolling with this for a little while now. I have another bow I'm trying to harvest craft right now, so I might update it later on, but for now I'm multi-modded. I multi-modded fizz damage and added fizz damage. This is because bleed scales with your physical damage. So the higher flat fizz or PDPS you have, the more damage you'll do. That is why if you're on a budget and you're leveling the build and you're pretty much a league start, get a Lionized Glare ASAP, because it'll carry you very far. I was doing T14s, 15s, and even some 16s with Lionized Glare, and it was working out very well. Without the Assasilum, bossing was a little bit of a struggle, but when I got Assasilum and I was using Lionized Glare at the same time, bossing was simple, so don't worry about it. The reason you use this is because it has really good, really high damage PDPS, and it's really easy to get. So something simple to go for. And then while you're doing that, you're trying to get your Elder Bow. Next most important, I would say probably Quiver, I guess. Quiver should be easier to get. You can get fizz damage over time multiplier. You're going to want to get an eye level. Let me see. I'll show you guys on the screen. This is POE DB, by the way. This is how you look at all the rolls you need. So you're going to want an eye level 80 plus to get the tier 1, or 68 to get T2 fizz damage over time multiplier. That's the roll we're chasing. So you want to get a Hunter Quiver with that. Getting that and movement speed would be probably the best possibility, but right now it's pretty expensive and I'm trying to craft that. So you're going to want to get those two rolls, and then you want to get some fizz damage. Attack speed would be nice, life is nice, and flat fizz is really good. And if you're crafting by yourself, forgot to put on D&D. And if you're crafting by yourself, you're going to want to craft it on a broadhead bow, because it gives the implicit is flat damage, so it's going to give you a little more benefit than the other ones. Next, I'm going to be going over, so the chest piece, I haven't really gotten anything too fun on it yet. You can roll the Warlord's chest piece that gives a minus mana cost, or you can do a Crusader chest piece that gives explosion. I actually had the 6 link and I rolled this, and then I got that Harvest Craft to actually add an influence, and I was hoping it was either a Warlord or Crusader, and I got neither, so that's why I have this influence. Don't read into the influence, the Redeemer influence at all, because it's not what I was actually going for. But yeah, get a 6 link. 6 link on split arrow is very nice. Your clearing is going to be super smooth. As an amulet, you're going to want to have the fizz damage over time multiplier. It is super helpful. And as for the amulet, you're going to want fizz damage over time multiplier, eye level 80 Hunter, 68 for tier 2, but of course you always want tier 1. Movement speed here is kind of like the Quiver, also really nice roll, but the best possible roll would be to get plus level of dex gems, movement speed, and the multiplier. This version of the build, you can get Malevolence, or you can have Pride has minus reservation. Which roll is it? Yeah, Pride has minus mana reservation, but it actually won't help us out too much unless we decide to spec into the minus mana reserved from Champion of Cause, and we use go all the way up here to Sovereignty, which is kind of a bit of a travel to get those two. We're kind of already stretched on points if we're getting a lot of life, so I didn't go that route. If you do decide to go that route and get an amulet, I believe I have one for sale right now. Yeah, if you get one with Pride has minus mana reserved, and then you get both mana reserved here and Sovereignty, you could actually spec in. You can have Pride and Malevolence and Flesh and Stone and War Banner, and it would all fit with Enlighten on your gems. But that's not the build I'm going for, because I wanted to focus on getting Assasilum, and you're also going to need a Helm enchant for that. So if that's the route you're going, you might want to look at MB Extreme's build. He has a mana reserved version of the build. and I went a completely different route and just focused on getting Assasilum and getting this build working as soon as possible. But as for Amulet, we're just looking for flat life, physical damage over time multiplier, and then I'm just going to slam on some resistance and hopefully maybe in a movement speed roll. As for the rings, you're going to want one with level 5 or level 8 vulnerability would be better. This is a bad ring. I just got it a long time ago, needs to be upgraded. You want vulnerability on one of the rings, doesn't matter. Having minus mana cost on your rings is very helpful. Not necessary because you don't need to spam cast. Casting once every like 5 seconds while you're mapping is pretty much what I do anyways, because you cast it once and it ricochets to every enemy. So I suggest at least one ring to have it. Both is not necessarily necessary. It's kind of a quality of life thing anyways. But yeah, for our gloves, you're gonna want fizz damage over time multiplier, and then just normal gloves to have resistance, life, and then any physical thing like attack speed or fizz damage. As for the boots, I'm gonna bring up POE once again because I don't have these boots yet. This is the next thing I'm gonna craft. You're gonna want hunter boots that are eye level 73 because bleeding you inflict deals damage 8 to 10% faster. Very helpful. That's just a flat more damage multiplier for us pretty much, because dealing that damage faster is going to really help us. So I'm going to pretty much be looking for that, and then just movement speed, life, and res. That's all you're going to want on your boots. The base for the boots are going to be a little more expensive because there's actually the tailwind that can roll on hunter influence boots. So the base boots might be a little more expensive. I'm actually trying to roll it on these boots right here to replace them. But anyways, lastly, we got our belt. I don't have anything special for this right now. I haven't thought about it. I might update my forum guide if I think of something more clever for an influence or what we should roll on there. But I just want life, res, and I went for Abyssal belt because you can get an Abyssal Jewel, and that's always helpful. You guys are going to notice that I have a lot of avoid on my gems. That's because I've been playing with Harvest Craft and all my implicits landed avoid, chill, avoid everything. And then I kind of just went with it. Avoid shock on that, avoid ignite on that. And then I kind of just went all out and grabbed these 4 for avoid because it gives life and avoid. So it makes you a little more safe if you run into things. As for flasks, I recommend life flask, quicksilver, quartz, jade, and granite. Those are my preferred to go to. I'm thinking about swapping out these flasks for some unique flasks. I need to look into which ones are going to be most benefit. But the main problem with this build is that I have about 5.7k life, but we do fall into the route of not having like block and things like that because we're a bow character. We have some okay evasion and some okay armor, but we do die a lot, so all of my flasks are kind of defensive in that way. So I have that protecting me, and that's pretty much it for the gearing. Pretty simple. Read my forum guide if you're gonna look into it more, if you missed something that I said, and utilize PODB to make sure you're getting the correct eye level of items, because you're always going to want the T1 rolls for if you're crafting it yourself. And in Harvest League, you're going to be crafting most of the stuff yourself because it's really fun. So yeah, that's it for the gearing. And now we're going to be getting into the passive tree. So the passive tree, I'll go over the general route, but I made my my updated path of building have multiple trees, so you can see it leveling up. But what we're going to do, we're pretty much rushing bloodletting. You can grab bleed chance on the way of bloodletting because you're going to want to get your bleed chance on your skills. Where's split arrow? You're going to want your bleed chance to be as close to 100, like over 100% doesn't mean anything. I just happen to have it because you just get a lot of it once you hit late game. But you're going to want to hit 100% ASAP while you're leveling. So grab the bleed chance here and then rush over to Red Storm and grab some life nodes on the way, like Bravery, Golem's Blood, and Bloodless. You can grab on the way. You can also grab Deadly Draw for a little more damage also, but your generic path is you're gonna rush Bloodletting I can't speak, sorry guys, Red Storm, and grab Resolute Technique. That's going to be really important for this build because you don't have to get any accuracy things or worry about missing your shots or your percentage against evasive enemies. You're just going to hit everything. It's going to be very nice. Lionized Glare makes it so you always hit enemies, but you're going to eventually have to let go and not use the Lionized Glare, so Resolute Technique will be mandatory before you get the Lionize and after you get Lionize, but during it you can take this off if you want to save that point. So you pretty much beeline it to Resolute, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pretty much fill out a lot of these life nodes. Grab this damage node over here and fill out life, but you're going to be saving up for a Lionize fall. Get one of those as soon as you can. I got one pretty early. I think I got it day 2, so I was level like 60 or 70 by the time I got my Lionize, but the earlier the better, because these gems or these notables really help with bleed. Bleed Uflick does 15% faster. That's really big damage, and chance to bleed really helps for early game damage over time for bleeding, all that stuff with ailments. This one gives us onslaught and attack speed. It's just these wheels are really nice, so grab a Lionize if you can. And yeah, so once you get into late game, I'm going to explain. So I grabbed Imbalanced Guard because I was reading calculations on this, and we have, how much armor do I have? 1,355. That's a really small amount. So 100% chance to defend with double armor, but reduction is to 50%. We don't even hit close to 50%, even up. See, like I put on plus 3,000, we get 10k, but I'm still not at 50, so I didn't reach the cap. So even if I do hit my flasks, we don't hit the cap of 50% anyways. So it doesn't really matter what we do. So this just pretty much gives us double armor. Call to Arms is for your Enduring Cry, so don't grab it until you're using Enduring Cry. And I grabbed this one node. You guys might think this is a typo, but I wanted to get phasing. You can get phasing on your quiver with I forget what influence gets phasing on your quiver, but I decided to not do that and go with the Hunter one because I wanted more PDPS, because you want the most damage. But I just grabbed this one node because we get phasing pretty much. You kill one pack on intro of the map and you pretty much get phasing already. You can grab all of them if you really want to, but I don't think it's necessary. I just think getting the one is pretty nice. Wind Dancer, really actually helpful. So we have a good amount of evasion on this build as well. 2,000. It's kind of low, but when you pop your flasks, which I ran out of, we have a decent amount. So, but we get 40% less. So this is 40% less than what I'm supposed to have because I have Wind Dancer, but I take 20% less damage if I've been hit. If you haven't been hit recently. So this prevents us from getting one shot. That was an issue I was having with this build once I started doing T16s like back to back, started like juicing some of the maps a little bit. I started noticing that I was a little bit squishy getting one shot. This Wind Dancer and this Imbalanced Guard actually ended up helping a lot against getting one shot, because once you get stunned you get slapped around and die. But you can take more than one hit with these nodes on, and then you can run away, dash away. Hopefully you killed something, get phasing. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the passive tree. If you guys have any more questions about why I took certain nodes, ask me down in the comments below. I will answer you as soon as possible. I'll get the cluster jewel really quick. Really bad cluster jewel, but cluster jewels are kind of expensive right now, and I'd rather spend money on my bow and quiver. So I don't prioritize getting cluster jewel. You can take all these off, spec them into life, and then actually get these life nodes right here instead, and grab just other things that give life. Just finish out your little life wheels if you don't have any good cluster jewels. But as for cluster jewels, I have in my forum, if you're interested on what cluster jewels to look for, I have it down in my forum. But yeah, what we're going to be looking for is pretty much our medium jewel, and just any of them with bleed damage over time multiplier. Really helps, a lot of damage. So I would prefer to get a large jewel, and a large attack jewel that has 2 sockets, so I can put 2 medium jewels, both have rend and something else, and then we can just socket a jewel into it. But yeah, I just did the 1 medium jewel because medium jewels are our biggest reason to use cluster jewels. We don't really care much about the large cluster jewels, like the rolls on it, as much. We just care that it has 2 jewel sockets, and it has the least amount of travel nodes to those two sockets. Sorry, can't speak right now. So we want the 8 adds 8 on the jewels for the large, and then you want adds 4 or 5 for the medium. As for the Ascendency, you want blood in the eyes and rush directly to gratuitous violence. This gratuitous violence lets us explode enemies. Bleeding enemies explode, dealing 10% of their max life as fizz. This pretty much just makes this build why I call it Bleedsplosion, because you guys have seen some of the clips of me just shooting things and they explode, and it makes it really nice. It makes it so porcupines can't do their little spike thing and kill us, and it makes it so our AoE clear is that much better. Next, your third lab, you're going to be going Arena Challenger. Challenger charges help out a lot with clearing really fast and just running around faster. And then Outmatch and Outlast lastly, because we get frenzy charges when we kill with our bow, because that's our main hand. We don't kill with our offhand, unfortunately, so we don't get endurance charges. So instead I grabbed Inexorable, so I do get the endurance charges, so I can take advantage of this and get reduced fizz. And this also is another thing that helps me so I don't get one shot right away. So I have a bunch of endurance charges that give me additional reduced fizz damage. So it's just kind of like it all sort of works together. It's not mandatory to take, but if you feel squishy when you're doing T16s, I recommend trying it out. As for the jewels, you want other than Lion Eyes, of course, you're going to want some fizz damage over time multiplier and life jewels. That's pretty much it. You can get damage over time, but damage over time multiplier is so much better. I spent like 2C on each of these jewels. They're super cheap. So just focus on getting damage over time multiplier and life, and then you can get other like bleeding or global fizz damage, or if you need resistance, you can get resistance here, or if you need intelligence, which actually might be pretty nice, so you don't have to grab these, you can grab that as well, because you're also going to need a lot of dex for this build, so you can grab dex. So yeah, those are some of the options you can do for the jewels, but I really didn't spend much money on the jewels. Just getting life and damage over time multiplier make the travel to it very much worth it. Next, I'll be going over the gem links. So for the gem links, I'm going to be I'll go over our biggest DPS first, which is puncture. To that, we're going to link deadly ailments, vicious projectiles, and brutality. This gives us the most DPS. You can also add things like swift affliction and unbound ailments, but I feel like brutality, vicious proj, and deadly ailments give us the maximum amount of DPS. Swift affliction makes it so the bleed doesn't last as long, and that means you have to attack the boss slightly more. So that was my reasoning behind that. Same thing with split arrow. We use the same 3 links as that, except for we use chain and fork just so the clearing is insane. If you for whatever reason you don't enjoy the chain fork, like how it bounces around enemies, which I think is the most fun part of the build, you could also use pierce. Pierce is really good for clearing as well. It just pierces through all the targets, makes them all bleed. But a reason I don't want you to worry about it is because chain actually doesn't less our DPS. So it says supported skills deal 11% less damage with hits, but bleed is an ailment, not a hit, so it doesn't actually lessen our DPS by using chain. So our bleed DPS stays the same when you take it in and out, so it just makes it so it chains now. But if you do decide to go with pierce, you can add one more skill gem, which will probably be something like Swift Affliction or Unbound Ailments. But I highly recommend trying out chain and fork with split arrow. It's so fun. You guys, it's the reason I decided to use this build, because once I decided to not go random arrows, I had so much more fun with it. Next, I'm going to be going over ensnaring arrow. So I didn't really explain how bleed works. So bleed, of course, is an ailment, just does damage over time. It's based on your physical damage, blah blah blah. You guys probably already know that. But what another factor of bleed is whether or not whoever is afflicted with bleed is moving. So on the POE website, potential damage bleed based on physical damage, 70% per second if the target's standing still, and then an additional 140% to a total of 210% if the target's moving. So it's really important. We do so much more damage if the enemy is moving. So what we're going to do to guarantee that they're moving is use ensnaring arrow constantly on bosses, because ensnaring arrow makes it so it makes the DPS calculate as if they were moving. So so to make sure that that's constantly being used, we put that on a totem support with GMP, so it's just constantly hitting anything, and if it happens to be that they're mobs with the boss, the GMP will pretty much hit everything. You could also proc in something like fork or chain or pierce if you're having trouble on certain bosses for whatever reason, but I figure that having it on a 4-link maim, GMP, and totem does the job for me and really adds a whole lot of DPS. So whenever you're doing a boss fight or fighting a rare mob, just slam down a few totems. Another option for this is to actually use not totem support. Just swap out totem support with Mirage Archer. Mirage Archer makes it so you cast the ensnaring arrow once, and then there'll be like the Mirage Archer above you constantly casting it for what, 8 seconds or something like that. That's also usable, and you'll actually probably see me using that in a few of the clips that I was using or showcasing for maps, because I was trying to really give it a try, but in the end I really enjoyed using totems very much more. It felt a lot more smooth, so I could just focus on attacking and didn't have to worry about casting ensnare and stopping. Like casting a totem is really fast like that, and I could cast a bunch of them, so it made it that much easier to use. Also on my bow I have linked cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, level 3 cast when damage taken, level 5 Immortal Call. Make those whatever level you feel like, whatever works for you. But yeah, just follow those levels if you don't know how to calculate the levels. Next, you use Dash and Second Wind with Empower. Those 3 are linked together, so it makes it so our Dash has Second Wind, so we have 2 charges, and it recovers really fast with Empower because it makes it higher level, makes it come back up pretty fast. And for Enduring Cry, we don't take advantage of Second Wind of having 2 casts on it. That's because we have Call to Arms linked, or Spect, because it makes it so Warcry share their cooldown, and that for some reason makes it so we don't get the multiple 2 calls of it. But we also have it so Warcries are instant, so we can be walking and use it at the same time. We don't have to cast it. And I noticed that when I was like walking around to cast it, you can use it even while stunned, so which is like the prime time to use Enduring Cry in my opinion. So use Enduring Cry, you just slap it so you don't die. It's pretty much like a health potion. You get so much damage or life regen. I get 2,100 with Empower and Second Wind in level 20 and all that. So it's really good survivability. You can just constantly spam it. But yeah, Second Wind makes it so the Enduring Cry regens faster, and Power does the same thing and makes it so we regen more life. Our auras, we have our War Banner, Flesh and Stone, Pride, and I have that linked to an Enlighten. That makes it so it reserves less mana. You can see that I have 103. I spec it, I get 131, and if I get this at level 3 or level 4, I get even more. Enlighten's not necessary, but it's kind of like a quality of life thing, kind of like how our rings are quality of life, to make it so our non-channeling skills have -5. It makes it so just our attacks require less mana, so we can not have to worry about, like, if we actually end up spamming, we're not going to run out right away. But yeah, I recommend these links. And a thing that I'm actually going to start testing out is, other than using Pride, you can use Malevolence. Malevolence does just as it works differently. Pride gives nearby enemies 19% less or more fizz damage, and it rises up to 40. But Malevolence doesn't matter about the range it's applying to us, so our damage actually, the more damage multiplier applies like if we off screen. But if we hit a monster off screen, Pride doesn't reach that range, so they're not getting the effects of Pride. So if you're kind of noticing that your playstyle is like super long range snipey and you hide, which is the playstyle I've been using, you might want to try out Malevolence. That's what I'm going to be trying out. But Pride has bigger numbers, and if you're all about like Shaper DPS and whatever, Pride is going to give you the most, because it goes up to 39% as you stand near them, so it's going to give you the most. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the gem links. Thank you so much for checking out my video. I really appreciate you guys if you've made it this far through the video. I know it was a long one, but I felt like I needed to go in depth about some of my decisions on the passive tree, because I've been getting questions on the forum already about why I use certain things. So I felt like I needed to a little bit over explain some things, and I apologize if you found it useless. But I know that there are some of you who don't know as much about the game, so me explaining things a little more of a basic level and explaining my thought process actually helps you out with your game and future builds. So it's going to be a thing I actually continue doing. If you enjoy my build, guys, make sure you subscribe and just like my content, I guess. I don't know. Do what you want. I just hope my build guides help you guys out, and yeah, I hope you guys have a great Harvest League, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.